Hey folks, this is Tony Day. Got another camera to talk about today, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can, as I'm sure you've already seen several videos about this already, so I'm just going to give my opinions. First of all, this camera is very similar to the A7S3. If you look at the pricing, it's $38.98 at B&H. A7S3 is $34.98 US dollars. So the FX3 is going to be more expensive, and I'll explain why it's not really that much more expensive as far as the sticker price when you consider a few things. So let's get into this thing. What I'm not going to do is spend a bunch of time talking about everything that's the same. I'm going to talk about the things that are mostly different with this camera compared to the A7S3. Image quality wise, my understanding, same sensor, which is a great sensor for 4K recording, up to 120p in 4K. I think there's a tiny crop to that, but that's pretty impressive considering the size of the sensor and what it's able to do. So here you'll see, it's pretty small. Okay. It's in inches and not in centimeters, so keep that in mind for anybody that's not American. And you'll see it's a 35 millimeter full frame. Otherwise, in video large format, um, it can go up to 120 FPS with a small crop. It's very lightweight, less than 2 pounds with the battery and memory card, so that's pretty impressive. What you'll notice here on the side is this little vent. This is actually very important. It's a very important difference with the A7S3. And what this does is allows a fan to be in here to cool the sensor. Now, this is important because when you're shooting for a long period of time, when this sensor heats up, it adds noise, okay? And when that happens, you get noisier shadows, noisier images in general. Just because of that, it will have theoretically better image quality than the A7S3. Now, a lot of people, when they do tests online, they're not going to be testing, using this camera for like 6 to 8 hours and then testing the image quality, in the heat of battle on a shoot. Which one is actually giving better noise? They're going to usually turn both cameras on after a long period of time of not using them, and they'll both be cooled. If you want to see the difference as far as the heat on the sensor and whether or not there is any practical or realistic difference in the noise, someone's going to have to do a test between the A7S3 and this FX3 to know if this fan is actually helping with noise or not. Now, what I do know is that with the fan, you can shoot indefinitely for even the highest frame rates. So that is a plus on this if you plan on shooting a whole ton of 120p or 60p, which I would probably never ever do in my lifetime. So, if you want to do that, there's that. So if you look at the top here, the design of the body is different. It has a different button layout, which is good for, I should say it's better for people who are going to be using this for video. You have a zoom rocker for certain lenses, which I think is a wonderful addition. I think this is fantastic that they put it right there where the power switch would usually go on a regular SLR or mirrorless stills camera. So certain lenses that have power zoom, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this only works with power zoom lenses, which I would expect. You can zoom just basically right there with your finger, which is awesome. Another important thing here is mounting points. If you look here, you've got 3 screws here, and there should be another one over on the side. So with any of these, what that means is that you're going to be able to mount a few different things. If you want to put a monitor on there or whatever else you might want to put on here to rig it out, you will be able to do that without needing a cage to add those additional mounting points, which is really nice. For some reason, they neglected to put 2 mounting points on the bottom of the camera in order to make sure you have a fully stable camera for video. I have no idea why they neglected to put at least where you can put a little pin to hold it in place, but that is something that they did miss. But these are a welcome addition, and I'll explain these particular two mount points here along with this here. Now, what it doesn't have is a viewfinder. You'll notice this here. There's no viewfinder. And in my opinion, generally speaking, I don't see much of a point of having that stills camera kind of viewfinder just kind of in there like that. I would prefer to have one that you can actually angle. That new one from Blackmagic Design, for example, where you can angle it straight up is a lot more helpful. And it has a flip out screen, which is great for people who like using these flip out screens. I'm okay with tilt screens, to be honest. Flipping over to the Sony page, you'll see that it does have a record button here and it does have tally lights. You can see it lights up on record here and here. There's a tally light here. I'll tell you that in my experience, unless you're working with certain people, having a tally light here is not that important. I would, if you're doing interviews and stuff like that, try to turn that off if you can, or put tape over it if you can't turn it off in camera, which I believe you can. But if you're doing multi-camera shoots where the news anchors, for example, this helps them know which camera they're supposed to look at. The back of it is mapped out a lot better for video users. You have this focus magnification, which basically digitally punches in so you can grab focus quickly. With how good the autofocus is on the camera, I'm not sure how often I would use this. But it is for people who are doing manual focus, it does make sense to use this kind of thing. I will say that this trash button, it should not even be there. Nobody should be deleting video clips in camera. Um, so don't use that as remap this trash button as soon as you can. It has focus peaking, it has a zebra, it has your shutter speed, all those different things, um, which is great. And just to see the back of the A7S III by comparison, we can see here that these are more mapped out for a photography shooter rather than a video shooter. So my opinion is that if you had to pick between the two, even though you can customize how all this stuff is set up, having this with it already set up the way that I would expect for a video camera makes a lot more sense to me. And if I was using, say I was going in the market for either the A7S III or the FX3, definitely as far as the button layout and all that kind of stuff, the FX3 makes a lot more sense. So the next thing I want to talk about is this unit here, which comes with the FX3, which is awesome. Okay, so what this does is it has, you get this handle that comes included. And let's see if we get a top view of that. Do we get a top view? I don't think we do. There we go. So if you look here, this thing screws in place. So if you don't know what this thing does, it's pretty cool. What it does is it feeds audio in through the hot shoe, which is fantastic because it means you have less cables running through and you can actually have a nice compact setup, which is great. Like, especially for people who are using this camera, I'm sure for the intended purposes, you don't want cables everywhere. You want it nice and compact and lightweight and all those things. And all those cables hanging off make it very annoying. So this you get two XLR inputs, and you get this little thing where you can clamp something on the top if you want. But basically, you can just hook this thing in, or you can hook in one where you have over your talent, and you can control it. And the audio quality is far, far better out of this than it is out of the other mic inputs. So this thing is fantastic. And if you want to know how much it goes for, here we are at B&H, and this thing goes for like 600 bucks. Okay. Now you're not going to get this microphone, and I have no idea of the quality of this microphone, but what's great is that with this unit, you get really high quality audio with much better preamps. And you also get this top handle included, which does have, I don't know if you can see it there, but it does have some mounting points on it too. It looks to be. So I think that, and the other thing here, okay, this screwing in is a really good thing. I would have really been worried if it was like one of those screw top things for a hot shoe. I wouldn't want to use that kind of thing here, but they thought ahead and they let you screw this thing in so it's nice and secure. You're not going to have any connection issues with this, I'll bet. So this is a really nice setup as far as an all-in-one package, in my opinion. I think that this is really wonderful. Some people are going to be a little disappointed in a few ways, and I'll tell you what's disappointing to me. First thing that's disappointing is HDMI out instead of SDI. This is a professional cinema line camera. I kind of want SDIs, guys. I want SDI out because it locks in place. I don't. I know they have a little thing here where I guess you can put a little tab to hold that thing in place, but HDMI, it's very, it's a lot easier to break this connection than it is to break an SDI. And the SDIs just lock right in place in the camera, and they're a standard. The other thing that I find a little disappointing about this is that it does not have exposure uh, features that I would have expected out of a cinema camera. I'm not seeing anywhere where it says that in this thing you can have LUT support, or you can use waveform monitors or false color and stuff like that. Not having those things is very annoying. Sony, make that a firmware update. The other thing that I will say is a little disappointing but understandable is the choice to use in-camera stabilization versus electronic ND filters. So I can understand why they have this. I just wish it was more built for me, and I think most video shooters, rather than using this kind of technology. But there are some other people who are going to disagree with me and say that they'd rather have IBIS than ENDs. So whatever. Take your pick. It's all gravy. All right. So the big question that people are going to ask, of course, is should I get this FX3 or should I get this A7S3? My opinion is if you don't have either camera, get this. The reason is that in my view, the viewfinder that you're going to be missing out of the A7S3 is not going to be worth it. This is much more of a video centric camera and has more things on it that I would expect out of a video camera, and I think it's going to treat you better than the A7S3. The great thing about this is that, in my opinion, it's actually cheaper than the A7S3. And the reason is because you get what I would expect would be a standard add-on with the A7S3 for video production um, with the FX3. And it's this thing. You get this with this. So, if we do the calculation, you're paying, what is it, about 3,900. You take off 600. Okay, this should be easy math, but you're paying about 3,300 to get that. Whereas if you bought the A7S3, that's 3,500, but you're going to probably want this anyway. In fact, I'd say you really should get this. So, I mean, that's just my opinion on that. I don't see a reason not to get this thing. So, yeah, FX3 all the way as far as picking between these two. I also want to point this out since the Pocket 6K Pro came out and it has like a lot of cool stuff with it too. If you're trying to compare something like this FX3 versus the Pocket 6K Pro, I've got to tell you, you need to get your priorities in order for which of these you'd rather have. There are a hell of a lot more conveniences with this FX3 that the 6K doesn't have, and there's a lot of really great things that this has that this one doesn't have. So, if you're to ask me between those two cameras, I couldn't really tell you. It's all going to be based on your particular situation. That's all I got to say about this. I hope you enjoyed this. If you please hit a like and subscribe. Please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TonyDay. And I will catch you next time.